Other evils there are that may come, for Sauron is himself but a servant or emissary. Yet it is not our part to master all the tides of the world, but to do what is in us for the succor of those years wherein we are set, uprooting the evil in the fields that we know, so that those who live after may have clean earth to till. What weather they shall have is not ours to rule.
Welcome to the Wayward Wizards podcast. Today we're reading Book 5, Chapter 9 of The Return of the King, The Last Debate. My name is Logan.
And my name is Zach.
Zach, this chapter rocks.
This chapter rules. I love this chapter.
It rules. It rules hard. I underlined like half the chapter.
Yeah, like the entire page. Yeah, exactly.
And then I double underline. I don't do a lot of double underlines. I'm not a big double underliner.
Yeah.
But I double underlined a few of the like just home runs that he hits in this chapter.
Man.
And it feels so good to read. It feels so good to read a chapter like this after the snore fest of the last chapter.
What a snoozer. Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah, we are so back, baby.
I just was like, oh, yeah, this is why I love this book, because of stuff like this. It's so good.
It rocks. It rules. Yeah, it's got everything that you want. I mean, I was thinking it's like a weird mix of, do you remember the chapter where Merry and Pippin kind of recount everything that happened at Isengard?
Yeah, yes, it reminds me, the beginning of the chapter reminds me of that, except it's opposite. It's Legolas and Gimli telling.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's like that chapter. And then the second half of the chapter is like a little mini Council of Elrond.
Yes. It's fantastic. It's so great. Well, I only have one criticism of the chapter.
Go for it.
I don't understand why it's called The Last Debate.
Yeah.
Because
it's like ironic.
I suppose, because it's like Gandalf and Aragorn are at the like peak of their isness of like who they are.
Absolutely.
And so they're like, this is what we should do. And everybody's like, okay.
Yep.
There's really no debate, you know?
No.
But you're right that the way they lay everything out feels so much like that funnel that we talked about, right?
Yeah.
And it does feel a lot like Rivendell, where it's like, here are all the facts. This is what that means. And this is what we have to do. Does everybody agree? And the difference between that chapter and this chapter is like how immediate the threat is.
Yeah.
And the resolve is so satisfying to read, how resolved they all are.
Oh, absolutely. Like, hey, there's one option here. And that option is for us to ride to our deaths. Who's in? Nobody's out. Okay, let's roll.
Yeah. Fatty Bulger. I mean, it's like the line that we must ride into the trap with our eyes open. You're like, oh, hook it up to my veins.
Yeah. I'm so here for it. The self-sacrifice of these men in comparison to Denethor, I think is really stark. Because it's like, yeah, I've been given the exact same information as Denethor, and I'm not going to choose to give up. I'm still going to sacrifice myself. I'm still going to die. But I'm going to die so that my friends have a chance. It's so good.
It's great. It's fantastic. It's just beautiful. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, that's why I read this book. And it's the Lord of the Rings and the changing of the tone is like so acute here. I mean, like going from last chapter to this, I mean, the tone could not be more different.
Yeah.
But this, I can just feel like when Tolkien knows exactly what he's doing and where he's going, he writes with like such a clip. And I mean, this is a short chapter. It's not a long chapter, it just moves. It just moves, and it's beautiful. In a lot of ways, it's an in-betweener as well. You know, it's them setting the board for this last play. And, you know, there's a few chess metaphors that come up in this chapter that I'm sure we'll get to. But this is the final Jeopardy. You know, this is the end game. They're setting it up right here.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. So fun to read.
So, all right, we waxed poetic enough about how we love this chapter and love Tolkien. You wanna you wanna jump in?
I do. The chapter begins with sort of a little joke from Gimli.
Yeah, you know, I started counting all the times that Gimli said something hilarious.
Uh-huh.
I counted 4
Yeah.
that I wanted to highlight, but Gimli has this this gruffness in this chapter compared to Legolas's like softness, and
Yeah, they're very contrasted in this chapter.
it's like a buddy cop kind of situation going on.
Yeah, totally.
And yeah, Gimli's just kind of like a tradesman visiting Disneyland. You know, he's like checking out all the welds.
Yeah, he's like,
oh,
this could be a little better. Some of this is pretty good, but some of it is not so great.
says the morning came after the day of battle, and it was fair with light clouds, and the wind turning westward. And Legolas and Gimli are walking abroad, and they decide that they want to see Merry and Pippin. Gimli says, "It's good to learn that they are still alive, for they cost us great pains in our march over Rohan, and I would not have such pains all wasted."
So funny. And then as they're walking, it says that the other folk in the city marveled to see such companions. For Legolas was fair of face beyond the measure of men, and he sang an elven song in a clear voice as he walked in the morning. But Gimli stalked beside him, stroking his beard and staring about him.
There's some good stonework here, he says. He says, when Aragorn comes into his own, I shall offer him the service of stone rights of the mountain, and we will make this a town to be proud of.
Did you notice that Gimli says when Aragorn comes into his own, and Legolas says if Aragorn comes into his own?
Yeah, that's really interesting, isn't it?
I think that's sort of an elvish thing. Like, they've been around long enough that they kind of know that sometimes things don't work out.
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
But this is an interesting contrast, though. You know, it's interesting that Gimli says when and Legolas says if, because Gimli is really critical of kind of the potential of men, and Legolas here in a few paragraphs will,
There's a lot of faith in what we might do.
yeah, he kind of almost like corrects him. Gimli is talking about how the best stonework in the city is clearly from the previous generations, and that as time has progressed, the stonework has gotten worse. And he kind of uses that almost like as a metaphor for like humanity's failed potential. He says, "It is ever so with the things that men begin. There is a frost in spring or a blight in summer, and they fail of their promise." And then Legolas responds, "Yet seldom do they fail of their seed, and that will lie in the dust and rot to spring up again in times and places unlooked for. The deeds of men will outlast us, Gimli,
Mm-hmm.
and yet come to naught in the end, but might have beens, I guess," said the dwarf. And Legolas says, "To that the elves know not the answer."
That sort of exists in Legolas's if.
Yeah,
You know, if Aragorn comes into his own, it sort of like contains, it's not like about uncertainty. It's more like the possibility contains like the promise of Aragorn's potential.
yeah,
I mean, Gimli's certainty about Aragorn is about his love and fealty and faith,
yeah,
you know, for Aragorn, which is a faith in a man. But he has the same certainty about sort of like the inability for humans to live up to their potential. But like Legolas's wisdom,
long-sightedness. Yeah, wisdom
yeah,
is the great word.
his like wisdom and long-sightedness sort of shows that, I mean, things might not work out in this moment because they're all going to ride to their deaths, right?
Right.
But it also contains like real promise for human beings.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. I mean, it's just it's kind of a throwaway thing. I don't know. it's we're literally talking about two little words, when and
Yeah,
if.
when or if, yeah.
But it really stuck out to me.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing to point out, and I guess the kind of the long project that Tolkien is doing here is explaining why we're in the age of men now, why
Yeah,
the elves and the dwarves and hobbits and wizards aren't around anymore, why there's this like deep sense that there was a greatness in our past that we've lost.
yeah,
And it's because we are in the age of men, and Tolkien fully recognizes the shortcomings of that while also having this optimism for our ability to live up to our potential, maybe
yeah.
even in just some diminished, like fallen state. But Tolkien talks about how, like, even were they to achieve this unlikely thing of like, giving Frodo the chance that he needs to destroy the ring, that Sauron would be cast down and overthrown and his physical form would diminish, but he would still be like this spiritual force of like gnawing
gnawing
malice.
gnawing himself in the darkness or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah,
In Tolkien's writing this in the midst of the 20th century when there's these two world historic wars where people do unspeakable evils to each other. So it's like Sauron never went away. He just works like through the evils that they're in us, already in Tolkien's philosophy. Yeah, so I do think it's an interesting frame to kind of start this. It's a little bit of give and take, a little bit of levity, but also like some real statements about Tolkien's like philosophy and theology, I think, are really present here.
yeah, totally.
So they run into our guy Imrahil, who Legolas is like a little smitten with Imrahil.
Ooh, must have elven blood in his veins.
Yeah, he's like, hey, it is long since the people of Nimrodel left the woodlands of Lorien, and yet still one may see that not all sailed from Amaroth's haven west over water, baby. He's like, that's a lord of men if I ever saw one. Imrahil's awesome. I wish we got like a little more Imrahil.
It would have been cool to get a little more Emerhill and a little less Houses of Healing.
Yeah.
Like it would be cool to have been like,
Yorith.
yeah, see like Emerhill sort of charging around the city and being the steward and talking to Beargill and you know all that kind of stuff. But instead we get not Beargill, Beargond.
Yeah. Even though I was a little down on Baragon and Beargill, I feel like that actually did kind of play itself out in a really satisfying way, seeing Baragon's courage.
Yeah, it's a really sweet way to kind of just have like a everyman, kind of
Yeah.
heroism in the story. But yeah, Imrahil is cool. So do you think that Imrahil actually does have elven blood? I mean, is he like on the same level as like an Aragorn?
I think lesser so than Aragorn, but yeah, I think the implication is that there's still like elvish heritage that runs through men, even in this like diminished state. Yeah. That is a fair lord and a great captain of men, said Legolas. If Gondor has such men in these days of fading, great must have been the glory in their days of its rising. So Imrahil is like, hey, Merry and Pippin are up in the houses of healing. You can go check them out. He's like, I'll lead you there. But Legolas and Gimli are like, nah. Just give us one of your servants. Show us the way. And he's like, Aragorn has asked that you join him. You and Éomer join him down in the tents. He doesn't want to come into the city. Gandalf's already there, ready for you. So there needs to be a council. He says, there is need for the captains to hold council at once, and he prays that you and Éomer of Rohan will come down to his tents as soon as may be. And so Imrahil runs off. The servant takes Legolas and Gimli up to the houses of healing, and it says that they found their friends in the garden, and their meeting was a merry one.
Legolas has his moment with the gulls.
Yeah, which was set up all the way back when he received the message from Galadriel about bewaring the sound of seagulls.
But yeah, he has his moment there and it sort of shakes him, He's
Yeah,
like, geez, that is my option, is to go to the Grey Havens.
yeah, and he says like, I hadn't seen them until we came to the Peligir, and there I heard them crying in the air as we rode the battle of the ships. So like he has seen them before this moment, but he's almost like haunted by them. You're right.
It didn't really dawn on him until now, and maybe he didn't have a chance to like really attend to it, because they were at war
Yeah,
essentially.
yeah. He says, "The sea, alas, I had not yet beheld it, but deep in the hearts of all my kindred lies the sea longing, which it is perilous to stir. Alas for the gulls, no peace shall I have again under beech or under elm." And Gimli almost like misunderstands what he's saying. And he's like, "Say not so. There are countless things still to see in Middle Earth and great works to do. But if all the fair folk take to the havens, it will be a duller world for those who are doomed to stay." I mean, that's our world.
It's a funny thing for a dwarf to say too.
Like, I don't want the elves to leave. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're whatever racism they had in them at the beginning of this
Fully gone now.
story is totally gone. They're like completely united, at least these two. And you're right, that is our world. I mean, our world is kind of this world that has lost its enchantment.
Yeah, exactly.
Certainly those parts of our world that are most overtaken by, kind of post-enlightenment ways of
Materialism.
seeing and knowing things, materialism, yeah. And I think Tolkien is definitely grieving the kind of the eminent frame, that was lost by the rise of rationalism and the loss of, kind of these folk tales, which is kind of what he's crafting here, right?
Yeah. I mean, so there's a way that this is like retcon, but it's also like a nostalgia for another way of seeing the world, a world that still had magic in it.
They're like, "Oh, don't say that." And then Mary says, "Don't go to the havens." And then Pippin says, "Don't be so gloomy. The sun is shining."
Oh, and the way the hobbits like bounce back is incredible, isn't it? I mean,
I know. They're so what, indefatigable. They're just
like Pippin just witnessed someone burn themselves alive, and he's like, "Don't be so gloomy."
the sun is shining. And here we are together for a day or two at least. I want to hear your story. And then Gimli's like, "The sun may shine here, but there are memories of that road that I do not wish to recall out of the darkness."
Yeah, hilarious. Gimli is so funny in this chapter.
Yeah.
Yeah, he says, like, "Had I known what was before me, I think that not for any friendship would I have taken the paths of the dead." And Legolas, for his part, is like, "I feared not the shadows of men, powerless and frail as I deemed them." So he's like, I wasn't afraid of these ghosts. Like, but Gimli is terrified.
Yeah, Gimli is, it's like he can't believe he did it,
Gimli says, "I don't want to speak about it." And says they fell silent. But Pippin and Merry were so eager for news that at last Legolas says, "I will tell you enough for your peace." And so he kind of launches into this kind of recalling, very, very similar to how Merry and Pippin did for him, really, I mean, in the story just a few days ago. Like, it wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, it's true. So much of this has happened in so few days. It kind of feels like months in some way.
Yeah, because we've been reading it for months.
Right. But it's really just a few days. I mean, that happens pretty quickly, all this.
So he breaks down, we don't need to get into too much in the detail of, what he breaks down, what happened. They call the dead at the Stone of Erech, and they ride forward. They ride for several days. Legolas describes that, they were really just like shadows, shades, and that I get the sense that people can't see them except maybe for Legolas, because he has like a spiritual sight that others don't have.
Legolas can see them, but then later on, Gimli does say that he can see them sort of standing on the shore.
He sees like the fire of the ships that are burning, like glinting in their eyes.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's something there, but I think shades is such a great description of like what this is.
Yeah. Legolas is just impressed by Aragorn's leadership. I think they're still like they've loved Aragorn, but they've loved him as Strider.
Yeah, right.
And Aragorn was a reluctant leader after Gandalf's death. This is the first time they've really seen him step into this leadership role, this kingly role, this commander of men, this general role. And Legolas is so impressed by that. At one point the shades of the men almost pass them, and almost like their eagerness to, I imagine it's in their eagerness to go to battle so that they can be freed from their oath.
Right.
And Aragorn commands them to fall back. And Legolas is surprised by this. He goes, "Even the shades of men are obedient to his will. They may serve his needs yet." And so they're so impressed with his command of men, of themselves. I mean, he's pulling them through the paths of the dead, but also these, undead ghosts that he's able to command with his own words. So they ride for several days, and it says, "And there men of Lamedon contested the fords with fell folk of Umbar and Harad who had sailed up the river. But defenders and foes alike gave up battle and fled when we came, crying out that the king of the dead was upon them."
I love that we get so many details of exactly what happens
Mm-hmm.
when the dead attack. Because we get that detail there, like you just said, that the defenders gave up battle and fled when we came. And then this is skipping ahead a little bit, but when he says, "By the black stone I call you," it says that the host that had hung back at last came up like a gray tide, sweeping all away before it. And then it says that the dead needed no longer any weapon but fear.
Yeah.
So they have weapons. I mean, they have these like ghost weapons,
Mm-hmm.
but that's really not what they're using.
No.
And these men who are on the boats a lot of them throw themselves overboard. The only people who
drown.
the only people who don't throw themselves overboard are the slaves that are chained to the oars.
Yeah, because they can't.
And then it says, "None of the enemy were left to resist us. All were drowned or were flying south in the hope to find their own lines upon foot." And then I love this. This comes up a couple times. "Strange and wonderful I thought it that the designs of Mordor should be overthrown by such wraiths of fear and darkness." And I think this is so much more, I just have to say this. I think it's so much more effective than what happens in the movie.
100%. I love it. I love
Which is like a green mist or whatever, kind of like flowing over things, and people are dying somehow, and you're like, what is happening? It's all the CGI. It's just a mess, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's not a force of arms. It's a force of fear and terror that is so scary that it causes you to kill yourself.
Yes, that is terrifying,
It's so scary that you jump to your death.
Right. Which I also think there's a kind of like grounded reality of like what encountering a ghost would actually be like, that we don't even get in like horror movies. Like, people are scared, but like, are they scared enough? I don't think so.
Are they so scared that they would jump off the boat to their death?
No, and I think that's how you would feel. I truly think that's how you'd feel if you really came up against something like that. I just think this is so, as a piece of literature, this is so effective and amazing.
Yeah, I think it's great. And there's some like logistical things that are happening here, which is that as they're riding along, the good guys and bad guys are running away from them.
Yeah, right.
Because they're so afraid.
Yeah.
But the good guys who run away, like these like fiefs of Gondor that they're encountering,
right,
later they're kind of counted among the people who they can reinforce their ranks with, because like after the terror of this event, Aragorn commands them to regroup and to march up to Gondor to Minas Tirith. And so he's like, I got 4,000 guys that are coming up, to reinforce us and to sort of man the city when we go off on this suicide mission. Yeah. So Tolkien just really thinks about everything,
Does.
It's like they're not leaving the city empty, because all these people that Aragorn is liberating with the army of the dead are now going to come in and fill the city behind him.
Yeah.
Let's meditate a little bit longer on Legolas saying, "Strange and wonderful I thought it, that the designs of Mordor should be overthrown by such wraiths of fear and darkness. With its own weapons was it worsted."
Mm-hmm. A couple pages ago, he says, "And lo, in the darkness of Mordor my hope rose, for in that gloom the shadow host seemed to grow stronger." Yeah, by its own weapons. What is it? By its own weapons, it was worsted? Is that it?
But with its own weapons was it worsted.
Yeah, I mean, who would write a sentence like that?
Tolkien. Yeah, I love it's got the same ring to it as oft will evil undo itself. It's a key theme in Tolkien that good can't help but win. Like
Yeah.
even these forces that we would think of as completely evil can be used to bring about, the ultimate good end.
Yeah.
It's just it's a beautiful philosophical take, I think. And the irony of the good guys calling ghosts to their aid to fight against the necromancer is a really beautiful thing. But Legolas says, in that hour I looked on Aragorn and thought how great and terrible a lord he might have become in the strength of his will had he taken the ring to himself. Not for naught does Mordor fear him, but nobler is his spirit than the understanding of Sauron. For is he not of the children of Luthien? Never shall that line fail, though the years may lengthen beyond count. And so that's like that's the long memory of Legolas.
Right.
He's thinking back into the deep past.
Yeah. Even though Tolkien's philosophy's theology is one of a long decline.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he would look around and say, yes, it all truly is declining. But there remains this sort of like silver thread through that never declines. Whether that's like the image of God in us or the Holy Spirit or just kind of an optimism about our ability to rise to the occasion with God's help or something like that. That is always there for Tolkien. And the way he operationalizes that in the book is through this myth about the children of Luthien.
Yeah, the Silmarils,
Right.
like Luthien, if you read the story of Beren and Luthien in the Silmarillion, it's a elvish woman who's the most beautiful woman who ever lived, and she teams up in this unlikely romance with a man named Beren, and they're given this task of stealing one of the Silmarils from the crown of Satan.
That's so good.
And they succeed.
Yeah, and they succeed. And like that success is like, it's part of this. We haven't talked about the Song of Creation for a long time, but it's been a long time since we've talked about the Song of Creation. But it's part of this like repeated refrain.
Yeah.
Right? Throughout the whole Song of Creation, of which this guy, Aragorn, is a part.
Yeah.
And these people who are in Aragorn's orbit get to see a glimpse of what that great myth was about.
Yeah.
Here in the flesh. And I think if we, could sit Tolkien down and ask him, he would say, when you look around you in your own world, you will find glimmers of that hope as well.
Yeah.
And that it remains there even when things are the most dire and feel the most hopeless.
And there's the reflection on stories that Sam has where he says, Aragorn told us the story about Beren and Luthien and, how they went into, the stronghold of Morgoth and, cut the Silmaril from his crown. And when you know it, Mr. Frodo, like, we're still in that same story, aren't we?
That's so beautiful. Yeah.
In just a few short chapters, Sam is going to be lying exhausted on the plains of Mordor. And he's going to look up and he's going to see a star shining in the sky. And he's going to realize that there's light and high beauty that even Sauron and all of his power can't touch.
Yeah.
And that is the Silmaril in the sky.
Right.
Being held by Earendel, watching over Middle Earth. There's something so beautiful about that. Like they're in the same story, and Tolkien just sprinkles these little textual reminders of that. And the depth of this, nobody has read the Silmarillion when they're reading this for the first time.
I know. That's the most like amazing thing about this is that even if the Silmarillion didn't exist, this would still like ring true.
Yes.
The fact that he did all the work. We've talked about this too before, but the fact that he did all the work and that he had it all in his head is, I think, a huge part of what makes it all feel so real.
Yes.
That he'd worked it all out. But even if it never got published, if he didn't have a son who, dedicated his entire life to like documenting all this stuff that his dad had written, it would still, you could still read this and know that this is like true.
This is a book with such depth. It is a strong tower built on a foundation that even if you are standing 100 miles away and you see this tower, like you know that it has a firm foundation, and he put in the work.
Yeah.
That like you can't see the pillars underneath this thing, but you know that they have to be there because of how tall it stands. Like that's what this book is, and that's what
beautiful.
all of this like subtextual stuff that gives it the sense of historicity.
Yeah.
He couldn't fake it, and he didn't fake it, and that's why it's so powerful.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Absolutely.
Getting back to the story, I think there's the give and take between Gimli and Legolas. Gimli is just like simple. He sees the ground in front of him, and he understands it. Legolas has this long memory, and he's able to like pull back and have these insights into like the nature of humanity and all these things. When Legolas says, "Never shall that line fail, though the years may lengthen beyond count," Gimli says, "Beyond the eyes of dwarves are such foretellings. But mighty indeed was Aragorn that day." He's like, I don't know about all that, but the Aragorn was awesome. So after this description of Aragorn and his kind of majestic command over these ghosts, we get the image of him releasing this army. It says, "Hear now the words of the heir of Isildur. Your oath is fulfilled. Go back and trouble not the valleys ever again. Depart and be at rest." And it says, "And thereupon the king of the dead stood out before the host and broke his spear and cast it down. Then he bowed low and turned away, and swiftly the whole gray host flew off and vanished like a mist that is driven back by a sudden wind." The breaking of the spear, I think, is another interesting parallel between Denethor and the way that he broke the staff of the steward over his knee before he burned himself.
Yeah, symbolic.
It says, "Now that the fear of the dead was removed, the men who had fled in fear of the hosts, the fiefs of Gondor, came to aid them and look at the heir of Isildur. For the rumor of that name had run like fire in the dark." So the people sort of come to see this living legend, and they, using the oars of the boats, are laboring down this river, trying to get to Minas Tirith as quickly as they can. And that's when the wind comes, the wind from the sea. So their time together sort of winds down with them just recognizing that they don't know what's going to come, and this resignation about like the uncertainty of like what's going to happen in the future days. But both Legolas and Gimli agree that even if this is the end, they'll be able to sort of hold on to that great victory. But there's also this sense that both of them say, I hope it's not the end, because I want to do well by my own people.
Yeah.
Gimli says, "Yet whatever is still to do, I hope to have a part in it, for the honor of the folk of the Lonely Mountain." And Legolas responds, "And I for the folk of the Great Wood, and for the love of the Lord of the White Tree." He says, then the companions fell silent, but a while they sat there in the high place, each busy with his own thoughts, while the captains debated. And then we get this little mini Council of Elrond.
Yeah, down to the tents. This is where I did the most underlining of the whole chapter. It's these paragraphs here.
I mean, this is only, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4.5 pages of Tolkien absolutely cooking. He knows, like, he has spent so much time thinking about the way that Sauron sees the world.
Yeah.
The pieces that are on the board now. And it is just so, he is so laser focused really, I mean, just like from here to the end of the book, it is just, he knows exactly where the ship is going. And it's just a really beautiful thing to see. We've talked about the funnel, the way Tolkien's analytical mind, he has this, and I think it has to be partly just from his like academic, like upbringing. Like, this is how you lay out a reasonable argument,
Yes.
which is that you lay out
Very
every
rhetoric.
possible outcome, every possible course of action, and then you winnow it down until there's one thing left to do. And so, as I read it, Gandalf's options that he lays out to these captains are, you know, the prudent thing to do would be for you to, you know, reinforce your battlements here, receive whatever like reinforcements of fighting men that you can from the fiefs, regroup, and wait for the next wave to come. That's what would be wise to do. That's what would be prudent to do. He's like, but instead, like, that's how Sauron's mind works. Sauron's mind works in reason. Sauron's mind works in cogs and wheels.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, what if instead we did something so ridiculous that it throws off the analytical mind of this great military general?
Yeah.
And we catch him off guard. We cause him to swing too quickly. And if he swings too quickly, he might go wide. And like, our neck will be in the way of his swing regardless.
Yeah, right.
But by distracting his gaze for a short time, we can give Frodo and Sam a chance. And like, the word that they use consistently is a jest. You know, there's an upside down logic to this where it's like, you know, we've been wise and prudent for so long. Denethor was wise and prudent, and look where it got him.
Imrahil asks, then you would have us retreat to Minas Tirith or Dol Amroth or to Dunharrow and sit there like children on sandcastles when the tide is flowing. And Gandalf says, that would be no new counsel. Have you not done this and little more in all the days of Denethor? And then he says, I do not counsel prudence. I still hope for victory, but not by arms.
Yeah.
For into the midst of all these policies comes the Ring of Power, the foundation of Barad-dûr and the hope of Sauron. So through this jest, through this feint,
Yeah.
they are drawing out Sauron's greatest weakness, which is his malice and his greed.
Yes.
It's Sauron's why. You know, it's the reason Sauron exists, is to feed this malice and greed. And so by activating that, they throw him off balance and give, Frodo and Sam some hope.
Yeah, and it's, Gandalf knows that the thing that Sauron most wants is the ring. And he thinks that, Sauron thinks that one of them has it, most likely Aragorn.
Probably, because Aragorn showed himself to Sauron, which we find out definitively here.
Yes. And he knows that the sword that robbed him of his treasure has been remade. He knows that a great captain of men has unfurled a banner of the kings and like made himself known. Like he assumes that Aragorn has done what he would himself had done, which is claim the ring for his own. And he can't imagine a world where somebody would not wield a weapon.
Yeah.
And because of that, he's going to throw all of his might at trying to get the ring back because he thinks he's won. And that's his weakness. So the plan is for them to muster as many men as they can. It ends up being, and of course Tolkien gets into the details of like exactly how many men they're going to have. It ends up being 6,000 men on foot and 1,000 men on horse. And it has to be a big enough force that Sauron thinks that it's an earnest march on Mordor. If it's too small of a group, he won't take the bait.
Yeah, he's got to take it seriously, but he also has to. It also has to be something that he knows he can smash with his forces.
And he absolutely will. Because like we've only seen a part of what Sauron has. Like he hasn't sent his entire force on Minas Tirith. He has a lot more. Sauron knows that he can still win the war even without the ring. Even in his diminished state, he's still stronger than these guys. Something that Gandalf, when he's laying out the proof that he starts with, he says that the forces that Denethor saw in the Palantir arrayed before him that caused him to succumb to hopelessness, he wasn't shown anything that wasn't true.
Yeah, it was all true, right? Maybe selective, but certainly true.
It says, the stones of seeing do not lie, and even the Lord of Barad-dûr cannot make them do so. So Denethor was correct that the great forces that were arrayed against them could not be beat through force of arms. He wasn't wrong to despair. But there's this whimsical wisdom that Gandalf has, which is that like the fool's hope that he's had from the beginning is still there. And if they try to just, reinforce Minas Tirith and have like another battle like what they just had, they won't win it forever. They can't. And so instead of just like hanging back, they're going to feign a Sauron like tactic, which is just throw the waves against the battlements. And that's going to be Sauron's undoing. It's just so brilliant.
Aragorn says, we must push Sauron to his last throw.
Yeah.
We must call out his hidden strength so that he shall empty his land. And then he says, he will take the bait in hope and in greed, for he will think that in such rashness he sees the pride of the new ring lord. And then he says, we must walk open-eyed into that trap, the trap of Sauron, throwing his forces at them, with courage but small hope for ourselves. But this I deem is our duty, and better so than to perish nonetheless, as we surely shall if we sit here and know as we die that no new age shall be.
Yeah. It's so beautiful.
I love this line too, because they sit silently for a while, and then Aragorn says, as I have begun, so I will go on. We come now to the very brink, where hope and despair are akin. To waver is to fall. Let none now reject the counsels of Gandalf, whose long labors against Sauron come at last to their test. And then everybody falls in line. Elro here says, okay. And then Éomer says, me too. And then Imrahil is like, sure, dude. But I'm also the steward of Gondor. How are we going to defend the city? And then Aragorn's like, oh yeah, by the way,
I got 4,000 guys coming up.
I got 4,000 guys coming. And I don't know, reading all this, it's so like one thing after another. It's just numbers, but it's like so satisfying to like hear these guys be like, look, this is what we've got, and we're going to use what we got to do the deed.
It's great. And each of them is so like the characters are so fully formed in Tolkien's mind that their responses are so perfect.
Yeah.
Gandalf is the sage general who's wise and whimsical. This is a guy who hangs out with hobbits, and he's not just a general. He understands that sometimes, the strength of arms is not the answer.
Yeah.
Because he's not got a mind of like cogs and wheels. He's got heart.
Yeah, exactly.
Then you have Aragorn, who's courageous and he's willing to die because that's who he is. It's just inherent in who he is. You have Imrahil, who is also courageous and willing to die, but he also is a steward. Like he needs to make sure that the city is taken care of.
He's like adopted this duty just a day ago or whatever, and But he understands, I think, better than probably Denethor ever did what it means to be Steward of Gondor.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then Éomer.
Oh, I love his response.
Éomer is, as for myself, I have little knowledge of these deep matters, but I need it not.
He's just a horse dude. But he says, this is what he knows, though. This I know, and it is enough. That as my friend Aragorn succored me and my people, so I will aid him when he calls. I will go. Oh, man.
Perfect.
Like, I would follow that dude, you know? So 2 days. In 2 days, we're going to that gate.
The timing is so perfect. And consistently in Lord of the Rings, calamitous things happen. And in the midst of it, good people choose not to give up. You know, the bit that we read at the start, it is not our part to master all the tides of the world, but to do what is in us for the succor of those years when we are set, uprooting the evil in the fields that we know, so that those who live after may have clean earth to till. What weather they shall have is not ours to rule. You know, I mean, so that gets back to like what Legolas and Gimli were talking about at the very beginning of the chapter. The seed that rots in the ground, you might think it's dead and it's over, but that seed will grow if the conditions are right, if the weather allows it. And Gandalf is like, hey, we can't choose what the weather's going to be. All we can do is till the earth now, the earth that is in front of us. We can't control the tides of the world. Like all we can do is do what we can with what is given us. And it's just such a beautiful thing. It says, this then was the end of the debate of the lords, that they should set forth in the second morning from that day with 7,000s, if these might be found, and the great part of the force should be on foot because of the evil lands into which they would go. And Emerhill suddenly laughs aloud and says, surely this is the greatest jest in all the history of Gondor, that we should ride with 7,000s, scarce as many as the vanguard of its army in the days of its power, to assail the mountains and the impenetrable gate of the Black Land. So might a child threaten a mail-clad knight with a bowstring and a green willow. If the Dark Lord knows so much as you say, Mithrandir, will he not rather smile than fear, and with his little finger crush us like a fly that tries to sting him? And Gandalf, because he just understands Sauron in a way that the Sauron wishes he understood Gandalf's mind the way that Gandalf understands his.
I mean, Gandalf understands Sauron better than Sauron understands himself.
That's it.
You know, absolutely.
He says, no, he will try to trap the fly and take the sting. Because he can't just win. He has to gloat. You know, like he will take you to the houses of lamentation and you will stand naked before the lidless eye. Like he has to torture. He has to bring pain. He has to bring revenge. And if Sauron would just wait, Frodo wouldn't be able to succeed. If he just had some patience. But Gandalf says, there are names among us that are worth more than 1,000 mail-clad knights apiece. So he will not smile. So he's like, yeah, like he's more afraid of Aragorn than you know.
Aragorn says, neither shall we, meaning neither shall we smile. If this be jest, then it is too bitter for laughter. Nay, it is the last move in a great jeopardy, and for one side or the other it will bring the end of the game. Then he drew Anduril and held it up glittering in the sun. You shall not be sheathed again until the last battle is fought, he said.
What?
Pretty good.
Chapter. This is why we do it, Logan. This is why we do it.
As always, thank you for reading along with us this week. You can join us next week for Book 5, Chapter 10, The Black Gate Opens. If you want to help us out, share the podcast with a Lord of the Rings fan in your life. Follow us in all the places, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. You can leave a review on Apple Podcasts. A 5-star review and a comment about how much you love the show goes a long way to helping other people find the show. And of course, you can comment on YouTube as well. We love to get comments on there. And visit us at waywardwizards.com for more info.
But until next week, but until next week, remember, off hope is born when all is forlorn. We'll see you next week.
Bye.